There is more to me, Queen Eliara of Elfgard, than my elven magic. Just as there's more to Geico than saving you money, Geico also gives you 24/7 access to licensed agents online, on the phone, or on the Geico app. And while I am a mighty elf queen, I am also a mighty big fan of barbecue potato chips. Minions! More smoky mesquite.
Geico. Expect great savings and a whole lot more.
Blog Talk Radio. Welcome to Within the Chaos with your host,
Rodney Shortridge,
and co-host,
Robin Dalton.
Well, we're back on Blog Talk. Yay! Nothing against Mixer, but just wasn't feeling it. So I'd like to welcome everyone for joining us tonight. You can listen in by going to blogtalkradio.com/Within the Chaos. Or you can call in at 323-870-4197. For deep within the heart of the Appalachian Mountains, I would like to welcome everyone and thank you for listening to Within the Chaos. My name is Rodney Shortridge. I'll be your host tonight, along with, I don't know who is going to be my co-host. Let me explain. Robin got called into work. I'm trying to get Tara on to co-host with me, and I have to wait to see if she calls in. But beyond that, until she does, I'll be doing it solo. Tonight, our special guest is Kimberly Brouillette, M.A. Kimberly currently works for Original Magazine while also focusing on her writing and editing projects. You can check out Kimberly's blog and website at www.kimberlybrouillette.com /Kimberly_Brouillette. I just want to say it was it's great to be back to Blog Talk. I really look forward for a long relationship with Blog Talk. They've been good to us, and I enjoy it. I also want to thank everyone that came out to the 5th annual Pocahontas Haunted Tours we had this past Saturday. It was an amazing success due to all the support from all of you that came out to experience this unique cold town. I want to thank you all for being so patient with all in a timely fashion. A huge thanks go out to all our supporters of the Pocahontas Haunted Tours, Historical Pocahontas Inc., the Mayor Ben Gibson, Pocahontas Town Council, the Tazewell County Sheriff's Office, Rescue 945, Pocahontas Fire Department, WVVA, Tazewell County Free Press, and all of you on Facebook and social media that shared our event with your friends and family. And also a big thank you goes out to our sponsors. Thank you all for opening up your pocketbooks and, helping us out. Rodriguez Funeral Home of Pocahontas, Virginia, Herscott Funeral Home of Tazewell, Virginia, First Sentinel Bank of Tazewell, Virginia, and the Ratliff Law Firm of Cedar Bluff, Virginia. Without everyone working together and supporting the Pocahontas Haunted Tours, we wouldn't be able to pull it off. I mean, it took a lot of people, a lot of energy, and it blew my mind how well it was so received. And I also like to thank my teammates, Black Diamond, and my friends and their family, and their hard work for making each year's tour, better and stronger from the year before. These men and women are the backbone of making the tour such an amazing experience for everyone that takes the tours and taking them throughout the town and explaining all the paranormal activity, the history, and all the past stories, ghost stories that people have told. So big thanks goes out to Robin Dalton, Jeff Dalton, Amy Shortridge, Scott Osmondson, Josh and Brianna Fuller, Nate Wheeler, Will Rash, Melinda Mutter, Olivia Abbott, Jerry Connor, and CC Clevenger. Thank you all so much. I mean, hats off to you all. We'll see everybody next year on October 7th, 2017 for the 6th annual Pocahontas Haunted Tours. We're going to go into talks to maybe do a spring haunted tour, so be watching out for that. And let me see if my hopefully co-host will come back on or come up. And I'm still waiting on her. So this is the part where I normally ask Robin how her week was, so I'll just tell you how my week's been. It has been long. It has been grueling. Oh, have mercy. After we got through the tours, oh, mercy. I ain't never worked so hard in my life, I don't think. But we also got the sci-fi convention that's coming up. I just about forgot. At Bluefield State College on October 22nd. We'll be there, I guess, from 9 to 5. We'll be speaking and doing a Q&A thing. So anybody who wants to come out, just come on out. It's in Bluefield, West Virginia. So let me see if she's about ready to come on yet. So I can introduce you all to her, and then we'll go straight to Kimberly. And she is, I think she's getting ready to call in. I hope so. Well, while I wait on her, I'll go ahead and introduce you all to Kimberly. Let's go ahead and get her on, because we'll just let Tara just catch up. That's how we roll here. Let's see here. Hello, Kimberly, are you there?
Hi. Yes, I am.
Well, how you
Rodney?
doing? Yep, it's me.
Hi. How are you doing? I'm doing great.
Well, I was doing good till just a few minutes ago when I found out that my co-host wasn't going to be on, and then I'm trying to find somebody to jump in their place, and that's going really slow.
Okay.
So right now it's just me and you, girl.
Well, that's fine. I can deal with it. No problem.
Well, I can too,
So,
but it's good to have a woman's perspective.
oh, sure. Yeah. It's nice. It's also nice to meet. I like to meet new people too, because being on those shows, I get to talk to people that I might not normally talk to, otherwise. So, and you're up in Bluefield, right? So
Well,
I'm
I'm close.
too awful far.
I'm close to Bluefield. I'm about 23 miles away from Bluefield in Tazewell.
Okay. We're down. I live near Charlotte, so in North Carolina. So we're not too far away.
Oh no, about 3 hours. Yeah, it's not too bad. Well, could you tell everyone a little bit about yourself and your travels and how you got into writing?
Sure. Well, as far as myself, I've pretty much grown up in North Carolina most of my life, but I have traveled a lot. I did live in Costa Rica and Mexico as a missionary kid when I was a teenager, and I lived in Texas, and I lived in Oklahoma, and I've lived in a number of different states. But North Carolina is my home. Excuse me. And I've been here since I was a teenager. I love North Carolina because it's nice to have the beaches and the mountains, and I can go about 2.5 to 3 hours either way, and I'm in some of the greatest places I've ever seen. So it's pretty awesome. But as far as getting into writing, it was kind of a thing because I actually have edited a lot longer than I've written myself. I've edited probably about 25 books for a small publishing company over the past about 10, 15 years. And I actually I was contributing editor for one about 11 years ago for Pamela S. Tolan, that she needed somebody that had some expertise in. I got my master's in biblical studies, and I helped her do the research for her book, Abram's Journey: Quest for the Man in the Stars. I didn't really get into writing myself until about six years ago, and I had. Let me go back a step. I moved in with Chris just over 7 years, right at about 7 years ago. And we moved into a haunted apartment. So when we were living in that apartment, we had a lot of things take place that there was no other explanation than paranormal activity. And so we had a lot of things that were pretty severe, actually, a couple of things that were pretty, very, very strong negative paranormal experiences, and we wanted some answers to try to get some help. So I got involved in the paranormal community on Facebook as a whole, and I started, asking questions, and, he had already done a lot of research over the years because he's even been haunted as a child. I wasn't used to that.
Yeah.
But he had warned me that there was a good chance that eventually the spirits would find him and that, we would start having activity. And sure enough, about 6 weeks after I moved in, we started having spiritual paranormal activity taking a place in the apartment. So I wanted to get some questions answered. I wanted to try to see whether or not some of it was okay. Some of it seemed like it was fairly benign. But there was a few instances that were extremely negative. And I even heard a disembodied growl literally right behind my right shoulder. and it was so loud that Chris heard it like 3 feet away, and he could pinpoint where the growl was coming from, which was behind my right shoulder. It was so close to me that I literally felt the vibrations on my neck. And when I realized, we locked eyes, and I realized that he heard it too from his expression. And so I was about to ask him about it when I heard it again. And so I jumped up and I grabbed him, and it was a very scary experience. And so we wanted to make sure, that we would talk to some people and seeing what they suggested and things like that. And we started getting advice, and we started trying different things. And we were in that apartment for about three years. And we had activity almost daily. Not always the growls or anything like that. That only actually happened the one time, but we did have other, pretty strong experiences. We had a little girl that would actually move. We believe it was a little girl spirit that would move some stuffed animals around and things like that. So basically, to answer your question, I got into the paranormal community and got to know a lot of people. And Karen Vance Hammond found out that I was an editor, and she had already written her first book, Shoe Marks. And she contacted me about a project, and she had started it, but when I looked at it, I was like, I really liked the premise of it, but it needed more depth to the story. So it really did need to be completely reworked and everything. And so when I was talking to her, I said, well, I've got a lot of great ideas. What would you think about collaborating on it? And so we started working on it together, and it was originally supposed to be one book, and I changed the name to Secrets in the Shallows as part of the monastery murder. It was going to be thought it was just going to be the one book. But then we ended up, we changed that into 2 books because there was just too much information. By making it a true mystery, to have the amount of clues we needed and the characters we needed in order to make it a real mystery, it had to be a little longer. So split the original idea in half and created a second book and made it part of the Monastery Murders, a series. But unfortunately, Karen had some family health issues that she had to tend to. So at the very beginning, we were literally just starting on the prologue of the second book, and she was unable to continue working with me on the project. So I basically took the project and ran with it with her blessing, because she just didn't have the time. And our readers were ready to get, because our readers were ready to get the second book, and so we needed to not delay any longer than we had to. But that's how I got started, and then what I ended up doing was adding a third book that told more of the backstory for the first 2 books. So it's basically a murder mystery that is centered around, it's all 3 are part of the same story. And it's all centered around this monastery where this serial killer has already at least killed 2 people, and we don't know if they've killed possibly more. And so, but the thing is that the investigators are, they're following their clues and their DNA samples and things like that. But the ghosts want to make sure they stay on the right track, because the ghosts of the victims want to make sure the killer is caught. And so they keep coming in and trying to help the investigators and different people that are in the right position to find out more the clues they needed in order to make sure they catch the right killer. And so they are actually at the same time, they're scary because they're ghosts, but not because they're necessarily bad ghosts. At least not all of them are. So, Deputy Williams is the main, I would say, our hero per se, where he's, the investigator trying to come in and solve this case. And these older teenage boys around 18 years old have been killed. So he's trying to figure out the connections. At the same time, though, a long time ago, there was a murder-suicide. And so there's the longer what Christopher Williams, the investigator, is the one looking for the clues and everything, the more he realizes that there's got to be a larger story to all this. And so, that's kind of like the crux of the whole thing as far as the story. But the first book is primarily focuses on the murders and bringing up the characters, and that one is Secrets in the Shallows, not Shadows. Shallows like shallow water. Mm-hmm. And the second book is called Devil in the Details, which you actually find out in the second book who the actual murderer is. But it's not what you expect. And then in the third book, as I mentioned earlier, they continue to try, go after the killer. But at the same time, there's an alternate timeline, which is showing you exactly what happened to get all these events started in the first place. And it goes back 30 years. And it shows how this bad seed, per se, began all these terrible events and how they all tie together. So I literally just finished chapter 76 last night. I've got the epilogue left, and I will be done. So I've been working on it a solid year, and I bet I've written probably 20,000 words this month alone. So
you wore me out just by saying that. Lord have mercy.
Yeah, I'm about to hit the 90,000 word mark. I should be hitting that by, if not tonight, I'll hit it tomorrow.
Lord, you got me sweating already. Lord have mercy.
But I did bring, if you're interested, the prologue for book one to give you an idea of where this all kicks off at. And then later, if you're interested, I do have a short an excerpt from a pretty cool dream sequence, a paranormal dream sequence that I wrote for book three. That would be a little teaser for the book that I'm going to be releasing on Halloween.
Oh yeah, most definitely.
So you can get a little idea of what to expect.
Heck yeah. I think everybody would enjoy that.
Okay. Well, I can go ahead if you'd like. The prologue for Secrets in the Shallows. Dense fog blanketed the canopy of autumn trees, arrayed in a myriad of yellows, oranges, and reds. In the distance, ghostly wails from a foghorn resounded throughout the valley. Its melancholy sound sliced through the silent evening air as its vibrations crept up the White House spiral staircase. In the lantern room at the top, the Fresnel stood sentinel, rotating endlessly, casting its beam of light out onto the water. Anchored in the bay below, lobster boats gently rocked back and forth in the surf while the ominous storm clouds encroached upon them. A large black crow landed on the shoulder of a marble statue of the Blessed Virgin Mary, standing watch over the monastery lawn. Dangling from the sacred maternal hands, a long strand of rosary beads flung back and forth in the coming storm's steady breeze. Loud cawing emanated from the crow's black beak as the bird spread and flapped its wings vigorously. The feathered hunter only took a moment to study its surroundings before flying away to find a safe haven from the storm. Rumblings of thunder filled the air as strikes of lightning clashed with the ocean in the distance. Light winds began to swell and howl while rattling the beautifully arched monastery windows. Raindrops steadily tapped the colored panes of glass, echoing throughout the corridors as the storm began its descent upon the campus. Suddenly, the monastery door was thrust open by a nun frantically fleeing the building. Dressed in a dark burgundy habit, she ran down the front steps, flailing her arms and screaming over her shoulder, "No, stay away from me!" Only seconds behind, a taller nun in a black habit clutched a short-handled battle axe with gloved hands while chasing the escaping sister. The dark figure slipped on the wet grass but regained her footing and continued to pursue her fleeing prey as the rain came down in torrents. The frantic woman disappeared into the woods as her screams for help evaporated in the wind. Her burgundy habit flared out behind her as she tried to escape. Evergreen branches slapped her face and scratched her arms as she tried to elude her pursuer. The nun's only goal was to find a safe place to hide. As the terrorized woman ran through the woods, a low-lying branch caught her wimple, exposing her long, beautiful blonde hair and drenching it with rainwater. Glancing back through the blinding sheets of rain, she was lost in a sea of branches and tree trunks. Suddenly, she slammed into her attacker. Tears burst from her blue eyes as a look of absolute terror and recognition came upon her. "Why are you doing this? What have I done to deserve this?" The dark nun mocked. "What have you done to deserve this? You really don't know?" Peering into her eyes with disgust, the ghastly nun grabbed her arm so hard that the blonde nun could feel the nails claw into her skin. Desperate to get away, the smaller nun tried to wrench her arm free, but could not escape from the dark nun's grasp. "Please let me go. You know I love you like my own family." Immediately, the assailant vehemently ordered, "On your knees, sister." Panicking, the frightened woman emphatically pleaded, "No, don't do this." Then, falling to her knees with the palms pressed together in front of her, she begged, "Don't hurt me, please." Without hesitation, a gloved hand brutally slapped the nun's cheek. "Why not? I've suffered silently for years due to your mistakes. You will never comprehend how much pain that you have caused me." Mud covered the side. Okay, I'm hearing a lot of noise. I'm sorry. I'm just making sure you. Mud covered the side of her face as the nun fell. Her long blonde hair splayed onto the wet ground. Frantically attempting to rise, the final thing the frightened nun saw was the sharpened battle axe blade swinging towards her. A grimace of shocked surprise was frozen on her face as her severed head landed on the ground. Her wide-opened eyes blinked twice as her lips voiced a silent protest. Her lifeless body slumped in the mud beside her head. Deep red blood spilled out from her open neck, mixing with the falling rain into the dark puddles like tears. Deliberately, the murderer trudged through the mud to where the nun's headpiece hung loosely on the branch of a gnarled tree. Lifting it up in the rain, the killer inspected the wimple for any tears before hiding in her own habit. Still holding the bloody axe, the murderer turned to study the victim one last time and then slipped away silently, fading into the shadows. Somewhere in the dark of night, restless eyes twitched erratically beneath their slumbering lids. An eerie moan escaped between the chafed lips of its confinement. In the dreamer's mind, a rising wail of anguish rose and joined the booming clap of thunder. Violently, the figure bolted from the bed as a white flash of lightning drove shadows from the room and momentarily blinded the once sleeping eyes. And that is the prologue for Secrets in the Shallows.
Wow. Wow, that's awesome. That's awesome. Now you got me. Now I'm going to have to buy your book.
So that's just the beginning, and that was actually inspired. Karen had a dream, my co-author in the first book. She had a dream where that is exactly what happened, and so she thought, this is just too good of a dream not to do something with it, you know. And so when she came to me, she really hadn't thought about the backstory and why the characters were doing the things they were doing, or what their background was, or anything of that nature, the motivation behind the killings and everything. So what I worked with her on was trying to come up with this backstory to basically tie all these characters together and show how all these terrible things are connected. And the ghosts, the nice thing about having all those paranormal experiences when I was living in the apartment was that I can draw from all those experiences as I'm writing, because I've actually experienced them myself. So when you talk about going on a paranormal investigation like y'all did last weekend, I literally had one in my home almost every day. So there was one time where I was literally about 2 weeks after the growl occurred, which was one of the scariest experiences I've ever had. We were getting ready to go to sleep, and I literally was one of those hot, cold nights, and I had my foot dangling off the side of the bed, and something grabbed my calf and started pulling me, and I screamed for Chris, and he puts his hands under my arms and starts pulling me, and whatever had my right leg, just my right leg, not my left, was pulling on my right leg and literally pulling me off the bed while Chris is sitting there trying to keep me on the bed. And I ended up sitting there hovering over the bed about 2 or 3 inches in the air. And so between Chris and whatever had my leg. My other leg, my left leg, was just dangling towards the floor, because I was, at that point, half of me was off the bed. Wow. So it was like I was like a human tug-of-war rope. And finally, Chris yelled at it to get the hell out of, excuse my language, but get the hell out of our home. You're not welcome here. And it finally let go. But
wow. Well, you don't have to worry about
I felt like that was, Okay. I didn't know about that. I know that some shows they do, but it was when that happened was when we were like, okay, we need to talk to somebody. What do we do?
Wow.
Because
I think
that was pretty scary.
Oh yeah. Well, see, I had an incident like that when I was a kid with my uncle, and we seen a hand come through a window, and it was one of those old doors that has the skeleton key, and the window doesn't open, and he runs upstairs. And I followed him, and he's like, I gotta pray. And he's laying there on his bed praying, and next thing I know, the window busts open, and something grabs him and starts trying to pull him out the window. And he grabs me, and he's like, hold on, Rodney, don't ever let go. And I'm like, what the hell is going on? So,
I can relate to that one.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah. Oh, Lord have mercy.
It's scary. And especially when you really, I was kind of half in, half out of sleep. And so all of a sudden something on the side of the bed that I can't see is pulling my leg. And I literally was having one of those paranormal activity moments, from the movie where you're literally being pulled off the bed. And so when I'm sitting there writing, I'm like, well, how can I incorporate this? Because this is, if I'm going to experience something that traumatic, I might as well get something for it, So I got a good story out of it, and I thought, well, I included that. And so in a little bit, I'm not going to do it quite yet because I just read the first one. I was able to take that experience and incorporate it into one of my chapters in book 3. So that is the one that I'm going to read in just a little bit about the third book. But that was pretty powerful. The other thing that we started doing was we got to a point where we did some research and did some paranormal activity, paranormal investigation. So we got a lot of equipment that we built up, and we had talked to a lot of people, and we started doing some paranormal investigation. So we started getting really experienced at doing that. And after a couple of years and all the things that we were doing, we were actually being asked to speak at paranormal conferences. And so we actually spoke at Brookwood in Ohio, and we also spoke at the Stanley Hotel in Estes Park, Colorado, which was really nice. And we've also gone a couple other places, but those were the two, the biggest events that we went to. The Stanley, I don't know if you've ever been there, but that's where The Shining was inspired by Stephen King.
Mm-hmm.
So,
no, I haven't been there.
You haven't? It's very beautiful out there. If you can ever get out there, it is well worth it. It's one of the most beautiful hotels I think I've ever seen. It's just beautiful because it's in this setting, and it's completely surrounded. It's in a mountain valley up in the Colorado, in Estes Park, and it's completely surrounded by mountains. It's breathtaking. And when we were there, it was fairly warm when we were there, but about 3 or 4 days after we left, they got a big snowstorm. So it was kind of, we kind of hit it just right to be able to not have all the snow and maybe not even be able to get up there. So, but we had a really good time doing that. And, but in Brookview, Ohio, I believe that basically we had a tremendous experience. We had a bunch of opportunities there. We were also speakers up there. And half of the town had been burnt in the 20s. So there were a lot of people died in that fire, and it was due to a gas explosion, a gas pipe explosion. And when we were, interestingly enough, when we were there, there was an old hardware store that has been, I don't know that it's been a hardware store the whole time, but it's basically been occupied for about 150 years as businesses. And it's been, it is not grounded very well. So you can literally feel the electricity in the air. And they had these huge rods, these big rebar rods and things like that sticking out in the ceilings and stuff. And they said, do not touch that because that is not grounded. And our K2 meters were pegging off the charts because the electrical charge was so strong in that building. And I think that is why the paranormal activity was also off the charts. They were literally feeding off that energy. And when we were in the basement, it was really interesting that we were in the basement, and there was this really mean spirit. He really was an asshole. His name was Carl. And we believe that he might have been the one that started the fire because he talked to us over the spirit box. And first of all, he hated women. He was a very angry person, or angry spirit anyway, but he absolutely despised women. And it was an intelligent discussion because anytime the men would speak, he would just tell them to shut up, or be mean to them and stuff. But when a woman would say, he would say, F you, bitch. And and he said it multiple times, so that those are not things that would typically go over the radio.
Yeah.
It's not some radio station that they're not going to put the F-bomb on there. And I mean, he said it at least 4 or 5 times. And it would always do it when a woman was asking him a question. Well, we asked him what he did, and apparently he worked on the gas lines, and he was smoking, is what we got out of the conversation. And so we kind of felt like he might have been, since it was a gas explosion, that he might have been the culprit. And that might be why he's so mad.
Yeah, dumbass killed himself.
Yeah.
You okay?
Excuse me. Yeah, sorry. I just got choked up.
I'm serious. I'd be
Yeah.
pissed off too if I killed my damn self like that. I'd be like, well, shit. Boy, I just messed that shit up.
But I think he was already an asshole. That just made him worse. But to tell you how ornery he was, we literally went up 2 flights of stairs from the basement. We went up to the 2nd floor. And first of all, when we went up to the 2nd floor, you literally felt like you were walking. This was something else I wanted to try to describe in the book. And I hope that it came across the way that I felt it myself. But it felt like we were walking through this really staticky room where it was almost like we were going through a staticky moose. It was almost tangible. It was that strong because you felt like you were walking through something because the static charge was so strong on that whole building. But that 2nd floor where those rods were up closer to, that we were, in the ceilings, so we had ones above us and below us. In that particular floor, it was the worst. And plus it also had access to the attics, and the attic storage areas, which also had a lot of paranormal activities. We actually saw shadow people in there. And somebody was out there, and they walked on the beams, and they felt people like spirits around them. They said they felt them actually touch them, and they also saw them. But anyway, when we were upstairs, we literally went to this one room, and we were talking to another spirit that was actually one of the women that was with us. Her name's Kat. She lived in Japan for like 7 years. And so she has a spirit guide that actually speaks to her in Japanese. Now, that is the weirdest thing you would ever hear. I'm not kidding. You're talking on a spirit box to a spirit, but they're talking in Japanese.
Wow.
In Ohio. That was really strange. So she's sitting there talking in Japanese to her spirit guide, and she said that was normal for them to talk in Japanese. And so all of a sudden she apologized, and she said, listen, you need to talk in English. So he started talking in English. That was even weirder. But then Carl decides he wants to interrupt. So he comes up, I guess he followed us up 2 flights of stairs, and he starts interrupting our conversation with the cat's spirit guide.
Oh, my gosh.
And he's sitting there saying the same old stuff. And he's telling us to shut up, and anytime a woman talks to him, he was telling her, F you, bitch, and, it was all the same thing, and it was the same voice as we had heard down in the basement. Well, then Chris is sitting there, and he's got his fiance at the time. He has his digital recorder, and so we had a digital recorder, and he had his headphones attached to it so he could hear. While it was being recorded, he could hear it through the speaker, on the headphones. That way there wasn't as much noise interference. And so all of a sudden, over the spirit box, he said, shut up or I'll effing hurt you. And Chris looked over at me, and he said, was he talking to me? And as soon as he did that, I saw his head flip backwards. And his headphones were flipped off of his head, and he said he felt like somebody hit him with a textbook on his forehead. But I saw it. It was like his head literally looked like some invisible thing had hit him in the head and had knocked his head backwards. His headphones flew off the back of his head, and he started feeling sick. He literally had to go outside. He had to run down 2 flights of steps to go out the back door through the basement, and he got sick outside. And if you've had a lot of paranormal experiences, it's not uncommon when you have an encounter with a paranormal entity of some sort or spirit to become nauseous. It can literally make you sick to your stomach. And I'm not sure what the correlation is there, but it's a common thing. It's not abnormal at all. So while he's down there getting sick, I'm still up here, and he didn't tell me what he did. He just said, I gotta go get some air. And so I was still up there, and I was listening what was going on, because he didn't even realize who it was at first because of what happened. He left before we actually found that it was Carl. So while he's down there getting sick, I'm finding out that it's been Carl that all along that's been, is probably the one that just hit him in the head. Mm-hmm. And so we're having this, we basically told Carl to butt out and leave us alone. We didn't want to talk to him. He was a jerk. And we ended up going into different parts of the building. But we are also in that same building in a different area. Chris and I went off into, Chris found this little room, and we all broke up and went off into little groups and everything. And Chris found this little off area in this room that was pretty dark and quiet and everything, away from everybody walking and everything. And he got on the spirit box. Unfortunately, we did our IR light had burnt out because we left it. I didn't realize it was on when we had it in there, and it had literally melted. So we only had the audio, but we do have the audio of it. And we actually interviewed for about 30 or 45 minutes a victim of a murder in that same building. And this was on the first floor. And it started out by this guy saying, he started calling out Scott. Now, you know Scotty Rorick, I assume. Mm-hmm. Do you know Scotty Rorick?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Scotty was there. And so we kept on saying Scott. And you can ask him about this sometime. It's really funny. It's Scott. And he kept saying Scott, just like that. And it kept repeating itself over and over again. Scott. Well, Scotty was on the other side of the entire building, and he felt something tap him on the shoulder. And he didn't know anything about where we were or what we were doing or anything. So he, all of a sudden, about a minute or two later, he comes walking in. He says, well, I felt like a spirit told me I had to walk over here. And then it said Scott one more time, and then it didn't say Scott anymore. So I guess we figured Scotty needed to be there. So Scotty and me and Chris were sitting there doing a spirit box session, and we started asking the spirit what had happened. And so, what's the last thing you remember? Blood. And it said that like 8 times. Blood, blood. And we said, okay, well, where was it? Gut, gut. And he would repeat the same things multiple times. So it was not like you're sitting there on the radio where you just happen to catch a part of a word that sounds like it. It was literally the same word repeated multiple times. And as we were talking to it, we realized Scotty got the impression, that it had been a murder. And so we asked him what the murder was, and we found out, he told us the name of the person. He told him what his name was. I don't remember all this because it was a few years ago, but we do have the recording. But it was he told us a lot of information, and we were talking to him about everything, and we were like, okay, well, we're trying to get a time frame. So one of the questions we like to ask is, what's the last president you remember? And he said, Roosevelt. Of all things, he says Roosevelt. So Chris says Theodore or Franklin. And it didn't even repeat the Theodore. It said Teddy was the response. and we've got this on. We've recorded it and everything. So I mean, we've got the evidence of that. So we basically figured that he must have been one of the people. It must have been about the same time period as when the fire took place, maybe just slightly later. In the 30s, because when it had been Teddy, it would have been before then. So, just at the beginning of the 1900s, when Teddy Roosevelt was, president, I guess, about 1910-ish? I can't remember the exact date, but give or take.
We'll go with that.
So, yeah, but it was, probably about 10 years or so before the fire, 10, 15 years before the fire. And so Teddy Roosevelt was the president at the time, and, we had this conversation, we found all these things, but it was just wild how he literally kept calling Scotty, Scott, and then Scott across the entire building knew to come over to where we were, and he helped us, in addition to the spirit box, we were talking to the spirit and found out what had happened to the guy. He was wanting to tell his story, and that was one of the reasons that gave me kind of an inspiration for parts of the book, because I thought, well, wouldn't it be kind of cool to have a spirit kind of help with the investigation of their own murder and tell the investigators what they needed to know, however they could. And so in the, Secrets in the Shallows, it's not quite as much in the first book. It starts building up more in the second. And then in the third book, they're literally, trying to get the word out. They're becoming more desperate. And there's more of them, of course, by then, as far as the victims are concerned. And they are wanting to get justice for their murders. So that was part of the reason why that came into play there, because I thought when I'm sitting there talking to a spirit that claims spirit box, that he's been killed by getting stabbed in the stomach. I mean, what better witness is there than that?
Yeah. No kidding.
As far as a story. So that's where the inspiration for that aspect came from, was when we were trying to figure out what to do with the story. I was like, this is just really a great idea,
Oh, yeah, I agree. Well, I think I got Tara on. Tara, are you on?
Yeah, I'm here.
Well, I was wondering.
Hi.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Dreading what's going to come of this hurricane.
Oh, I know. I'm in Charlotte, or near Charlotte, so hopefully it's going to turn off before it really hits us very hard. I was here when Hugo hit in 89, and that was a horrific, especially the first 2 weeks was terrible. We didn't even have power for 2 weeks.
Yeah, I'm about an hour away from you in Blacksburg, South Carolina.
Okay, so you're going to get it hit before I am even.
Yeah. We're starting to make plans for it now.
Yeah. It's not supposed to, it's supposed to start raining in the morning, but I don't think we're supposed to be really getting hit until either tomorrow night or Saturday, I guess. I guess it depends on how fast it goes. So
it's actually really huge and really scary, and the wind's kind of picking up here, and it's a little windy.
I'm hearing a lot of reverb on hers. Is everybody else hearing that?
Yeah, I hear it too. I don't know I don't know what's going on there, Tara. You're reverbing, or you fell down into a cave and we can barely hear you.
Okay, I'll take my headphones out and put it on speaker.
Okay, try that and see if that does any better. This is her first night on the show, so she's my backup if I need her.
Okay.
Is that better?
Yes, that's much better.
I think a lot has to do with the wind.
Yeah. Well, Kimberly, do you just write books, or do you do any other type of writing for like magazines or newspapers or anything like that?
Well, I do work for a regional publication, and I do some writing for it, though I'm primarily more in marketing, sales and marketing. So my primary function is in the sales and marketing arena, and I do probably more online writing than I do in the actual printed publication, though I do occasionally, at least probably about 4 or 5 times a year, I end up writing an article, like a sponsored article or something like that, for the printed edition. I've also done some content writing for websites, and I'm also a graphic designer as well. So I've actually designed my own book covers. Any of my covers and any of my graphics that you see, I've done myself. So it's a kind of a catch-22 thing where, as a writer, there's a lot of things, and being a writer, that don't have to do with anything necessarily directly with writing. To be a successful writer, you have to, have your graphics taken care of, and you have to have, your books converted into, Kindle, and you have to do all these different things where you're not actually writing the book. And and then of course you have the promoting and marketing and tweeting and, and everything else that goes along with it. So, but I have done a lot of content writing. I've also got a blog that I do post. I try to post at least a couple times a month on KimberlyBrouillette.com, and then the On the Ragged Edge is the actual name of the blog. There's a link on there for that for the blog thread. Mm-hmm. And so I primarily have done that. I have done some blog articles in the past based on the paranormal experiences, and my thread was called my series that I did was called My Life with Chris, because we were having so many paranormal experiences that I talked about, a lot of things that took place while we were living in that apartment, because it was just, I'm not kidding, we had everything you can imagine. I hate to use the word orb because, it's kind of a taboo thing, I guess, in the paranormal world, but it was basically a black anomaly. It wasn't a light anomaly. It was actually black. And it was about 2 inches in diameter, and it came out of the bathroom, in the main bathroom, and it would go out and float through the living room, and then would go through the ceiling, and sometimes it would go through our bedroom, and we saw shadow people. We had light anomalies happen as well. We had what we believe was a little girl spirit that would actually take my daughter's closet doors, which were like 2 doors that came together in the center, and she would sit there and just rattle those things at 2:00 in the morning. And I would go in there wondering what was going on, and my daughter's sitting there laid out asleep, and she's completely out, but her door is got it's her purse on it, and it's literally swinging like a pendulum from somebody shaking those doors. And, very violently. I was surprised it didn't wake her up. So I had all these things happen. And, it was just so unusual that I would tell people what was going on. And so I did keep up a blog for a while. But once I began to write the books, that pretty much has taken up a lot of my personal time between writing and doing graphics and then keeping up with my blog, and then of course coming on radio shows like this one and doing the various promotions and stuff, that it's hard to do too much outside of that, because it's almost like having 2 extra jobs on top of my full-time job, between marketing for myself and then the writing itself. The writing itself is a job by itself, but then the marketing and everything else is also like a third job, basically, on top of my full-time job. So it's kind of hard to do too much other than that.
Tara, are you falling apart?
What?
I said, what are you doing? Are you beating somebody up?
No.
It sounds like a boxing match going on in the background.
I don't know what it is, I promise. The wind's blowing. I'm sitting outside where it's nice and quiet because my daughter's watching TV and I don't want to go in there.
Okay. I was just wondering because I'm like, oh my gosh, somebody's getting a shit beat out of them. But, you know, where you was talking about the little girl, I had an experience one time when we went to do a pre-investigation of a family, and I was standing in the kitchen with the husband and with one of my case managers, and there was a little girl standing in between him and her. Then they had a teenage daughter and a teenage son. Well, I thought the little girl was their girl, and I mean, I looked at her, she smiled at me. We walked outside, and I even stopped to let her go in front of me. And
wow,
when we were coming back from there, I told Robin, I said, "What did you think about that little girl? Wasn't she so pretty? She's a little girl." I said, "The little blonde head, looked like about 5 years old." And she's like, "Rodney, there wasn't no little girl there." I said, "I know what I saw. There was a little girl there." And she's like, "No, they wasn't." So,
wow,
I've had that experience, and it's kind of freaky.
Yeah, the little girl was the first one that actually we think was the first one to actually kind of reveal herself, because my daughter, when we first moved in, and like I said, about 6 weeks after we moved in, she told me after a couple weeks, she's like, "Mom, my stuffed animals are moving around when I'm not here." And I'm like, you know, she's like 9 years old at the time, and I'm like any typical parent, well, maybe you just fell off your bed or something, or you put it in a different place than you thought, you know, whatever. She said, "No, I'm serious. I'll leave it on my bed, and when I come back, it's on a different, like on the chair, or if I had it on the chair, it was on the floor or something, you know, it's not in the place that I put it." And I'm like, okay. And I really, you know, this was before we had, you know, any of the paranormal experiences. And so I told her, I said, "Well, why don't we do a test?" Because she was so adamant. And when she's like that, it's like, you know, you just got to give her half of a chance on it, you know, at least. And so I said, "Well, let's put the stuffed animal in the middle of the floor." And so what I did was we were going shopping, and I said out loud, I said, "Well, if there's someone that wants to play with that stuffed animal, we're going to leave it out. You can play with it, and we'll know you're here." So we were gone for a couple of hours going shopping, and when we came back, the stuffed animal had been turned around 180 degrees. And nobody had been there, and she and I had looked at it. We literally closed the door to her bedroom, and it was sitting on the floor because we didn't want it to be just easily roll off the bed or something. We put it on the floor. And when we came back, it was 180 degrees away. And so we started playing a little game, and we started putting the stuffed animal like in the living room, and we'd come back and it would be on, like if we put it in front of the stereo, we'd come back and it would be on the coffee table or on the couch, or it would be on the floor and it'd be turned around the opposite way, or in a different room sometimes. And so that's how we started realizing that we had a ghost in the apartment. And that was just one. We actually we think we had 4 spirits in that apartment, at least. There was the spirit there was another one that I got the impression was a little boy that was a shadow figure about the height of the doorknob, and he would peek out from the bathroom. We'd be in the living room. We weren't the only ones that saw him. Even people that came over to visit would see him and say, "Is there somebody else in your apartment?" You know, and stuff. And we were like, no. And then we just kind of let it go. You know, that you must be just seeing things. And then there would be times yeah. But there would be times we'd be laying in bed, and all of a sudden we hear these little children's feet, and people say, well, it could be the apartment next door, which this is like 2:00 in the morning, first of all. So, but it would run right in front of our bedroom from the bathroom that was beside our bedroom, and it would run across the floor and down the hallway. And we lived near the Charlotte Motor Speedway, which these apartments, because of the speedway, there's a lot of extra noise, and so they soundproof those apartments a lot more than they would a typical apartment. Otherwise, you'd hear on Saturdays, that's all you'd hear was those engines roaring. And so, because we were only like about a mile away, and those things are loud. So I would literally have to hear somebody playing the piano on the floor below us. I would have to get on the floor, put my head to the carpet to be able to hear it just barely. So it was not somebody, you know, in the next apartment over. That it was just, and we didn't have anybody in the other apartment. It was vacant at the time anyway. So and the other apartment didn't have children, but this was definitely a child, you know, like little feet running down the hallway. And you know, we had a woman that literally, we heard her laugh in our bedroom, like right beside my side of the bed. She went, ha, ha, ha. And I looked up at Chris. I looked over at Chris, and I said, Chris, I said, we're like, did you hear that? It was really funny because it was literally right beside my side of the bed. And it was funny though, but I never got the impression she was negative. Now, but the Mr. Mean is who I call the one that was the growl, that did the growl and started pulling me, and it pulled me off the bed. And Mr. Mean, I was really concerned because he was very violent. And I started doing some research on the apartments and if there had anything serious happen there. And I couldn't find out the exact number of the apartment. I don't know that the people in the office knew which one it was. But apparently there had been a serial rapist that had done a murder-suicide when he was basically trapped. He did a murder-suicide. So I got the impression that he was Mr. Mean. And I didn't know if the woman was the woman or not. But I did feel like I had the sense that this mean man, I mean, that's why he was pulling me off the bed, because that's what he was. He was the serial rapist. And I got the meanest feeling from that spirit. It was horrible. That was the scariest of all the experiences. I mean, I've had lots of experiences, but that is the scariest that I've ever had. So,
well, all the characters in your book, which one would you say is the most challenging character for you to write, especially with all these paranormal experiences?
In all honesty, unfortunately, I can't completely answer that because it would be too revealing. Because it is a murder mystery, but I would say it is my serial killer, and the reason being is that it is a very complex. This person has some serious mental issues. and very complex type of personality disorders. So, without getting too much in it, this person is just really messed up mentally. But they've been able to live a lie, and they've got a facade that they have shown the world, and that no one realizes it. That they have literally a serial killer under their feet, practically. That's literally living in their community, and they see every day, and it's a serial killer. So that is a very complex person, because you have the mental issues, and then you also have the the personality, like the facade part. So it's almost like they have this personality that's behind the personality. And the other aspect, and this is probably one of the more complicated aspects of it, is that my books are a little different from some books, from my typical books, in the sense that a lot of books only go from one perspective. You have once upon a time, type of thing, and you have either a narrator or you have somebody telling their own story, and it's from their perspective. But mine is what you call a multiple point of view book. And what I mean by that is that, if you look at if you watch like any sort of TV show, and you see different scenes, you have different characters that are in those scenes, correct?
Yes.
So, especially in like a murder, like a, CSI kind of thing or whatever, you have different scenes that different people are going to have different perspectives, because they experience different things. Certain characters are located in certain places at certain times, and other characters aren't. So you have some characters that know certain things that other characters don't. And so with a multiple point of view book, it's a little, it might take a little adjusting for some people to get used to. Some people have no problem with it. Some people love the story, but they still realize that it's not necessarily their favorite type of thing. That's the way it is. Just some people love it, some people don't. But it's up to the reader, because this is a murder mystery. It's up to the reader to recognize what the different characters know. Because you have the police that know certain things, you have the forensics people that find out certain things, you have the killer that obviously knows what's going on, and then you have other people, you have the victims, and you have the ghosts. And then you have the people in the court system or whatever. So, and then just the normal people you run into day to day. So, depending on who is the active character, they're going to know certain things. And probably the biggest challenge is keeping those things separate. That character A knows this and this and this about the story, because that's what they deal with. And character B knows this and this and this, something else. And how to take all those things and allow for the evidence to basically come out of it, so the investigator can figure it out and find all those pieces. That's probably actually the biggest challenge of everything, is making all those pieces fall into place so that they make sense. That
sounds fascinating.
If that makes sense. It is. I love I call them Easter eggs. I love putting Easter eggs in my, a lot of people play video games and they're familiar with the term Easter egg in that sense, where you have a little clue that's hidden. But it might be almost in plain sight, and you don't realize what it is until you actually click on it. Well, it's the same type of thing, except for it's the clue for the murder. So I have all these little inconspicuous things that I've put throughout the story that may or may not seem like anything. But they probably, if they might be something totally insignificant, but they're in there. And then later on when they show up, you're like, oh, that's why that was in there, you know? And, you know, those are some of my favorite things to do. I love doing that, and I love cliffhangers. So at the end of book 1, you do have a cliffhanger, and you don't find out who the murderer is in book 1. You do find out in book 2, but again, you don't necessarily, it's not what you expect. And then, of course, in book 3, it'll be the end of the story. Though I do have plans for a prequel series and a spinoff series.
Wow.
To go.
Well,
So,
do you think that this may go to TV or theater, or anybody approach you about anything like that yet?
well, Chris is he's an actor, and we have a lot of connections in the film industry. So we're going to work on a screenplay, and see how that goes. I think it could be very viable, as I think it has the elements that are needed for a screenplay, for a movie, or possibly a miniseries. We'll just have to see if somebody thinks, you know, that I've had a lot of people think that it would make a great movie.
Oh, it sounds like it.
Well, when you know, I love doing imagery. You know, if you notice at the beginning of the prologue, you feel, I call it like living in the story, that you actually get the sense of what's going on in the story. You're not just seeing the action of what everybody's doing or what they're saying, but you're actually feeling what they're feeling. You're seeing the oncoming storm. You're feeling the wind in your face. You're seeing the rain coming down. There's lightning crashing. There's thunder booming. You know, you have all these things happening, and you're experiencing this with the characters. So that you feel like you're part of that story, and that is one of the things that helps the characters empathize even more with the characters, because they feel like they're in touch with them. You know, they're experiencing what they are dealing with. And I'll let you know, there are some scenes, I mean, there's chapters that will make you laugh, and there's chapters that I literally, in writing this third book, it was a chapter, and it was my saddest chapter yet. I cried.
Oh.
I cried at my own chapter. And I was like, well, if I'm crying, I imagine that other people will be crying. So that's I guess the way it's supposed to happen. But it's like I was so sad in writing that chapter.
Well, when you're putting your feelings and emotions on it, I could see that.
Mhm. So, but I mean, it allows the readers to, like I said, to so that the characters become important to them. You know, they mean something to them. And, that's what I want, for them to, they've actually, some of the best compliments I've ever gotten were when people told me they felt like they could literally call my characters up on the phone, because they were a lot like people they knew, in real life, or they felt like they knew them so well by being in the story that they literally felt like they were a real person.
Right.
So, to me, that is about one of the best compliments somebody could give me. That those characters became so significant to them, they felt like they were a real person. So,
well, what would you say is the most important part of writing? If somebody's out there and they're trying to do a book, or what kind of advice would you give them to fit? Because I know a lot of people that have started to write a little bit and then they stop, and then they put it on the shelf for years, and then they try to write a little bit more. So, what keeps you going? Yeah, I guess that's probably the best way.
The first thing is that when a lot of people write and they don't have any experience writing, they think that it's just a matter of sitting down and just beginning to write. And there's a lot more to it than that. When you're writing a story that you really want to appeal to the readers, the best way that I've found is that you have to plan it out a little bit. It's kind of like having a roadmap. You know, if you don't know where you're going, you're going to get lost. You know, if you don't have something to go by, you know, if you don't have a map or you don't have a, you know, satellite or, you know, your, you know, map
GPS
app on your phone or something, you know, you could probably get lost. Well, it's the same thing with a book. And that basically there's people that have started on a story where they just basically got 2 or 3 chapters in and then stopped, basically got lost. You know, they didn't know where they were going. They didn't have they know what they would like, the general idea of the story, but they haven't really sat down and thought about what is involved in it. And I've had a lot of people tell me, you know, over the years, you know, I've always wanted to write a book, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, be careful what you wish for, you know. Basically, I've been writing this book, this story for 5.5 years. 5.5 years of my life have been taken up with these 3 books that are all one big story that ends up being about 1,200 pages. So, you know, it's probably about 300,000 words in total. So, you know, maybe 320,000. So, I mean, that's a lot of words. That's more than some people say in a month, you know, or 6 months, you know. And so, you know, they don't think they when they begin the project, they don't really plan it, and that's probably their biggest downfall. What they need to do first is figure out what they want to take place. In general, I'm talking about big points, like what I call kind of like goal marks, goal posts, that are like, okay, say you're on the map, it's a pit stop. You know, what are the pit stops? Where are you going to stop in between? What are the main things that need to happen in order for that story to be real? You know, what you have to have A, B, C, and D happen in order for F to happen. Then what are those 4 or 5 things? Then what you do is you take those smaller segments, and then I basically try to work towards getting to that one goal. I'm not trying to take on the whole story all at once. I've got a general idea where I'm going, again, like the map, but I'm really just trying to get down to the McDonald's down, you know, about 20 miles down the road so I can use the restroom. You know, that's where I'm going right now. Okay? I'm not trying to go to, you know, Colorado right now. I'm just trying to go 20 miles down the road and maybe get a cheeseburger or something, you know, because I'm hungry. Or go to the gas station. So you have to figure out as you're riding what those little pit stops are. And in order to, when you do that, then you've got a shorter term goal that is more reachable rather than trying to look at this entire story that has to be told or this entire manuscript. You just focus on the first pit stop and just getting there. Once you've figured out the general idea of what those pit stops are, then you don't have to worry about all the little tiny details until you're actually working on that segment. So then what I do is I actually do a chapter summary for each chapter in that segment. You know, say it might be 10, 20 chapters, and I focus on determining exactly what's going to take place in those chapters. And I write a little, like a paragraph. This is what I want to take place in this. I want this person to do this person to do this, and this person to do that. That's what's critical. How that happens, you know, I can try to be creative with it, but those are the key elements that I need to take place. And so as I'm going back and I'm working on those segments and I'm writing, those are what I'm focusing on rather than what most writers try to do is sit there and try to focus on too much at one time. You know, new writers, that is. They're trying to think of the whole story, and you can't do that. It's overwhelming. So they get to a certain point in the story, and because they haven't drawn themselves a map, they have no clue where they're going, and they give up. Or they might pick it up every once in a while, but they haven't put enough of planning into it to be able to come up with a game plan, you know, on how to do it. And that does make a huge difference. When I when it was kind of weird when I finished book one, I'm sitting there, and it's kind of funny because at the end of book one, you don't actually find out who the killer is. So I actually had a few readers that were a little upset with me because they got to the end of book one, and I take it kind of a mixed thing because one of them really got angry about it, and they actually expressed it in the review, and they were like, they were talking about the fact they didn't like the fact they didn't know who the killer was. And, it's like, well, I guess if you are that upset about it, those characters must mean something to you.
Mm. And
yeah. So, they were literally upset. I mean, in that review, I was laughing because it was like, this is just a book. Do you have to get so upset? And the book two is already out. The book two was already out, and all they had to do was pick, get the Kindle, $2.99 for Kindle on book two, and be able to find out who the killer was.
People get all upset about stuff. Oh Lord, I
know.
And I ain't even a writer.
So, but I took it in a weird way as a compliment in the fact that they were so upset that they didn't know who the killer was. I guess it meant something to them, And as far as why I do it, it's kind of like you have a story. Once I begin a story, it's almost it's a passion. I can't turn off. I get to a certain point, and once I do get small breaks. Once I hit a pit stop, for instance, I might have a short, a day or two where I can kind of relax for a minute, kind of gather my thoughts, and then kind of start my cycle over where I go ahead and take on another 10 or 20 chapters where I'm going over the creating the chapter summaries and things like that. I'm not actually doing the physical writing of it. I'm planning it again. And so it kind of gives my mind a little bit of a rest for a couple of days from that concentration of writing, But it's kind of like a driving force. Once you get this started, it's literally like you can't stop. And once I begin, and I actually had people that were reading my books, and were encouraging me to continue, and that they wanted to hear the rest of the story, especially since, I came out with, it took an extra year to get the second book out because Karen had the family situation, so I ended up taking it on by myself, but I was trying to wait on her at first, and so it slowed it down a little bit. And then I got to the point I was like, listen, I've got to just run with this. I can't, people are asking us. It's already been 6 months since we'd released the first book, and people are upset because they didn't know who the killer was. And so I've got these people upset, and then I've still got the story in my head, and I'm like, I got to get this thing out, because it's sitting there literally. It haunts me when I don't write. So I went ahead and it took me actually about 18 months total in writing book two, but this one has taken me right at a year. So I've gotten the process down a little bit. Unfortunately, I can only work nights and weekends, when I have those times available. So it's hard to, get it done any faster and still have any sort of life other than writing or work. So I end up, I have only so much time that I can spend on it, and then also be able to promote it, and like I said, go on the radio shows and do graphics and everything else. So it's been a lot, but it's a lot of fun. I enjoy it.
Well, I guess that just takes away my question about what do you do in your spare time?
I don't really have any. I really don't. Until I finish this book, I'm probably not going to have any. I literally have been, almost every night from about typically from about 9 or 10 o'clock at night till around 1 or 2 in the morning I'm writing. Or I'm doing some other aspect related to the writing. That's kind of like my work hours, if you will. And if every once in a while I'll take a little an evening off if I need to. But for the most part, I try to do it. Try to write at least 5 or 6 nights a week. And then typically on weekends, that's even multiplied depending on my availability. I'll try to write. But it's just mainly because my time is so limited and I want to get these books out. Like I said, I've got readers that have literally, they're wanting that next story. And so I'm trying to get it written as quickly as I can, but do a really good job. And, and please, my readers. That's one of the reasons I want to provide them with a story that they'll be happy they read,
or at least mad that you left them hanging.
Yeah. But I do have I had mentioned before, and it's I guess about 11:30. So if you're ready, I can go ahead and read a teaser for the book if you'd like.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Now, let me give just a little bit of background on this. As I mentioned, this is the book 3, which is the one that's going to be coming out. It's called Method in the Madness. It's scheduled to be released on Halloween. I'm going to be doing a benefit for my book launch on the Friday night before, which is the 28th. And I'm going to have a benefit for the homeless shelter here in Concord. And I'm going to have it at the local brewing company, Cabarrus Brewing Company. And it's going to be a costume party. So anybody that's in the Charlotte area or wants to come, it's going to be going for a good cause. Tickets are $30, but it does include dinner and some drinks and the autographed paperback copy of the book. And we're also going to be having a raffle and prizes. I've already got one of the jewelry stores too. They're going to be donating something really nice for part of the raffle and everything. And I've got several other nice prizes. So, and I'm still working on doing even more for that. So, but the net proceeds are going to benefit our the Salvation Army handles our homeless shelter in town, and that's what it's going to benefit. Even have our local congressman might be coming. So, I think we're going to have a good time. But it's all going for a good cause. So I figured after 5.5 years worth of work, I was gonna have a nice party. But this way, I could it'd be a win-win-win. I can have the party, we can have a great time, and I can still, the proceeds can go for a great cause. So everybody wins. But this is the third part. Method in the Madness is the third book in the series, and this is the one I was telling you about, that it literally goes back and it tells the backstory. This one, though, this part is the current timeline where they're actually trying to catch the killer. So there's actually two timelines going on at the same time. So anyway, here we go. This is from chapter 5 in Method in the Madness. And I'm going to omit a couple of things because I don't want to give any spoilers. Okay, ready? Lying flat on her back, Katie steadied her breath and breathing in a repeated slow rhythm. I don't know what to do. Making a concerted effort to calm herself, she took several long, deep breaths. Each one dragged her deeper and deeper into her thoughts. Remember what Mom told me. Think of the sound of snowflakes as they gently land. Think of the quiet winter meadow surrounded by trees. Deep breath in, deep breath out. Katie focused her mind and shut the world away. In an instant, she was transported to a peaceful snowy meadow. The happy chirping sounds of small sparrows flitting through the trees almost seemed real. The only other sound she heard was the light pitter-patter of snowflakes as they landed all around her on the white shimmering lawn. Gazing about, Katie saw a familiar army of evergreen trees standing guard nearby. In front of her, a snow-covered path led down the hill to the monastery pond. In a dreamy stride, Katie was automatically drawn towards the deep, icy waters. With each step, the cold winter grass released its hold, and the snow began to melt. By the time she arrived at the pond, it completely disappeared, revealing a green, grassy field. Surrounding her, she saw the familiar monastery campus and the beautiful garden with its statues. Standing at the water's edge, Katie found a lone rowboat that seemed to be waiting for her. Without a second thought, she gingerly sat down on the slatted seat and rowed to the center of the pond. Again, she took a moment to look around in the quiet solitude. As she watched, the sun escaped from behind the large, fluffy clouds and shone brightly, warming her skin. Without warning, Katie was suddenly pushed from the boat and into the water. She sank deeper and deeper as ropes mysteriously formed around her hands and ankles. A thick rope noose ensnared her neck and pulled her downward by an unseen heavy weight. An icy chill pierced through the slumbering fog as the frigid water stole each breath one by one. What is happening? With her fading sense of reason, she thought, how can I save myself? Grasping desperately at the twisted ropes that clung around her neck, the realization of her impending fate consumed her. Someone help me! Hundreds of air bubbles escaped upwards, cascading towards the surface as her battle for life continued. Pulling and tugging unsuccessfully at the tethered weight that held her there, her mind reeled in panic. Water filled her lungs, extinguishing any hope of survival. Her mind screamed, "Oh, God, no!" With that, her last ounce of awareness washed away and her body went limp. The eerie calm of death seemed to envelop her, leaving only a cooling corpse behind. Strangely, the dreamlike vision continued as her spirit drifted away in the water. Fear was locked on the mortal face as an empty pair of eyes stared out into the darkness. An eerie calmness filled the silence as she pulled away. Looking back at the motionless body, sight of a familiar face confused her. In the dark, the younger version of, I can't say who, floated with lifeless eyes staring back at hers. Slivers of rotting flesh drifted loosely from his face in the slow undercurrent. Trying to understand what she was seeing, Katie's mind raced with questions. She wanted to scream, but feared losing her last breath in the strange nightmare. As she watched the body drift in the water, it seemed to become more waterlogged and decomposed with every moment. Suddenly, the body gained new life as the dark, dead eyes fixed on her once more. He tried to speak, but no sound would come out as he mouthed the words, "Watch out, he will kill you." As he concluded his warning, his eyes instantly went blank again. The last of the air bubbles escaped his mouth and drifted upwards towards the water surface. Lost in the dream, Katie was adrift between reality and spirit. The quiet calm of the darkness surrounded her. Just as she thought her nightmare had ended, she felt a pair of hands grasp her calves and pull her further downwards into the black water. Immediately, she was jolted from the confines of her dream world and back into her own bedroom. Katie wondered, is this real? Opening her eyes, she could see nothing in the shadowy darkness of her room. Still feeling the hands pulling on her legs, she jerked away as she repeatedly yelled, "Let me go!" Kicking her legs several times, Katie clawed her way towards the head of her bed and reached for the small lamp on her nightstand. Turning it on, she looked for the culprit, only to find the same face from her dream staring back at her. When a look of horror filled Katie's face, he released her legs and stared back at her with sorrowful eyes. And I have to stop there.
Damn. Damn. You give me goosebumps. Woo.
That's one of my favorites. Of course, I can't tell you anymore because it'll... Huh?
You just couldn't wait to read that because you're like, oh, I will get the big boy on this one. Oh, Lord.
I love that one. It even gets better, but I can't say anymore. It'll reveal too much because I want to keep this. I want to keep the mystery.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I don't blame you.
But that's a little taste of book 3.
Oh, that's all right. Hey, you got some talent there, Lord.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Oh,
I
you're
enjoy
welcome.
it.
I enjoy it. I enjoy reading because when I used to drive a truck, I used to drive cross country, long haul. I'd buy a lot of books on audio because I never had really a chance to actually sit down and read a book. So I listened to books. And the guys that rode with me sometimes, they'd fuss. They're like, I want to listen to the radio. I'm like, shut up. I'm learning. I'm listening. This is good.
We actually, I do have plans on doing. I've been asked several times, but I do have plans on getting some audiobooks made. Chris, is my other half, and he actually does. He's an actor, and he actually does 300 voices. So
wow,
I'm going. Yeah, so he can. I've actually counted, and we stopped at 300. So I know for a fact he knows at least 300 voices. I listed them. And I wish I could find that list, but I did list them, and it went on for several pages. But I thought he would be the perfect person to do the audio file, and and do the audio book. And we actually set up a sound room and we have a walk-in closet. It's a small closet, but it's big enough to put a desk in there and our sound equipment, and then we put up some barriers for, some sound barrier quilts up there, and it's our little sound room. So we've got the place for it, and it's just a matter of me getting this done, so that I can, because it's a little different on doing the audiobook versions of it, and and then basically set him up to begin doing the recordings on that, so we can do the audiobooks. And you definitely have a plan on doing that. I think that would awesome. So I'm planning on. I would hope it's going to take a lot of recording, because keep in mind that these are big books. Each one is about, or it's an average of about 400 pages. So they aren't the little tiny books, but they are fast reads. So it's going to take a little time, but I'm hoping that maybe by next summer that I could try to release maybe all 3 of them. That would be ideal. I'd like to try to release them at once, if at all possible. For the same reason I didn't like, once people read the first book, I didn't want them to. They were kind of mad at me. I don't want that to happen again. If I can avoid it. I'm just going to avoid it. I'm like, I'm trying my best. I'm only one person.
That's right, people. Don't judge.
But I mean, it's doing all my own graphics and everything. It takes away the time from the writing. And if I did the audiobooks and stuff like that, then that too. All of it takes away time from the writing. So it's not that I don't want to do these projects, but I want to make sure I time them so that I can still get my projects out. And right. I do have the next project is I'm actually going to start with the prequel series, and basically all of these are about this one serial killer, and then you do have some events that go back to the previous generation that you find out because of the parents and stuff like that. So it gave me the idea of actually doing a prequel series. And I, without getting too deep into it, because I don't want to reveal anything quite yet, basically I'm going to have this serial killer is going to be descended from a famous serial killer. Ooh. So I'm going to have a way of making that happen, and it's going to be a little bit more unusual. I'm not going to say exactly how I'm going to do this, but I think it's going to be a really cool series. It's one of these things that now that I've got this going, that this is, it's got to be written. I've definitely got to write this. And and I'm going to use the actual case when I get there to that point. I'm going to actually use the real case to incorporate into the story. and then I'm going to also, throw in the same mixture that this has been successful. To me, I feel like it has been with the different elements, and it's kind of like it's been called like a mixture of Hitchcock's suspense with Christie's mystery with a dash of King's horror, which I feel like, is kind of an accurate portrayal, because it really is a mystery, but it does have the suspense in there, and it does have, a little bit of horror, just enough to keep you on the edge of your seat sometimes,
Yeah.
It's got all those elements in it.
Well, there's one question that's been pondering on my mind, where, you went to college for your biblical studies, and where you have paranormal experiences, and you're from the South. Have you ran into, like I run into all the time, with people of religion kind of rolling their eyes at you and or giving you hell about, what you have experienced and what you're talking about as far as the paranormal part?
Mhm. Oh yeah. I definitely have. I have some very. I was raised I've been raised in a pretty spiritual or religious home, I would say, spiritual home. Not in a bad way. I mean, my family was, was a good family to me. Like, I had good parents. I didn't have, anything bad happen to me per se growing up or anything. And they loved me. It loved me. My dad passed away about 20 years ago. I still miss him. But as far as the South is concerned, we are in the Bible Belt. And I've actually had some family members that would say that by dealing with the paranormal, I was dealing with demons. And unfortunately, because they haven't experienced, I lived in a haunted apartment. It wasn't like I could just until my lease ran out, I was stuck, so it wasn't like I could just go away. I had to deal with it. And so I started studying it, and I was like, I need to understand this. And I actually read some scriptures, and people would actually talk to me, there's no such thing as ghosts, and those are demons, and blah, blah, blah. And I would point them to scripture. And I can't remember which, I'd have to look up which specific book, because it's been a while since I looked it up. But in the scripture, after Jesus was crucified and the sky turned black and all that, a lot of people forget or skip over the fact there were spirits that were released, and they were walking all over Jerusalem, and it says it in the Bible. You can look it up.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I know.
It said basically when Jesus went to paradise and he opened that door, basically, that door to the hell and the grave, however, you want to call it, that those spirits were released to basically tell of what he did. That's what they were doing. So they went up to Jerusalem, and this is in the Bible. You can look it up yourself. So, and they were giving the word of the gospel to the people in Jerusalem that were alive. So you had that. And then you also have the situation where Saul actually sought the advice of, I believe it was Elijah, from a medium. Okay? Now, he was chastised for doing it, but he did. And according to the story, he got in touch with him. So if all spirits are demons, then why is he talking to Elijah? you know? So after he's dead. So, people with that don't experience those things, or they are only taught through the scriptures and they haven't actually dealt with them themselves, don't necessarily understand what they're talking about. They're just speaking out of books. They're not speaking for their personal knowledge. And when I do have a strong sense of, what's the right word? I'm sensitive in the spirit as far as knowing whether or not it's a positive or a negative spirit. You can sense that. I'm sure you know that. That when you have a negative spirit around you, it's obvious. When you have a positive spirit, it's just as obvious. You can feel a different atmosphere. And for instance, with the little girl in our apartment, I never felt, even though she was in my daughter's bedroom and she was, playing with the doors, or she would play with the stuffed animal, I never got a negative feeling about that spirit. I didn't ever have anything bad happen with that spirit. If it was a demon, I would have thought that, maybe it would have tried to con us at first, but eventually, before 3 years were up, it would have shown something else. I mean, do you agree? If it was a demon.
I agree 100%.
And in contrast, go ahead.
A lot of the cases we work on, people we talk to, they're like, oh, it's a demon. And then you go in there and it's like, no, it's just,
it's just a spirit.
It's just, somebody, and I believe however you are in life, it's how you are in death.
Exactly. You can have mean people in life and you can have mean people in death, just like you do in life. Either way, good people. You have good people. But that little girl, I never had anything negative. In fact, every once in a while we would be on a radio show, and it was really funny because we would go on a paranormal radio show to talk about our experiences and stuff. And sometimes we would literally be sitting there, and we would feel this little hand slip around our waist as we're sitting there on the couch. And it was like this little arm putting their arm around us, around our waist while we're sitting there. And one time Chris looked over at me, and he looked back at the other side, and when anything there, he looked back over at me, and he says, were you touching me? And I said, no. He said, well, it looked like, he said it felt like she had slipped her little hand, little child's arm, and slipped it around his waist and was holding him by the waist while I was sitting on the other side. And it was so real to him that he thought it was me. So, and I'd had that same thing happen. But see, if it was a demon, why would it be putting its arm around us? Not like that. But on contrast, I had Mr. Mean, who was pulling me off the bed and growling in my shoulder, behind my ear. That was scary. Maybe it was a demon. I didn't get the impression. I didn't feel like it was a demon. I just felt like it was a mean old man. And, he was a bastard. And if it was that serial rapist, then I would explain it. Because he was killed in our apartment complex. I don't know if he was in our apartment. I just know he was in our complex.
Well, I've been touched before, on an investigation at the cemetery. I thought it was one of the people in my group grabbed my shoulder. I turned around and looked, and there wasn't nobody there. But I didn't feel like it was anything evil. It just kind of gave me a little willies because I wasn't expecting it.
And and then there's in addition to that, and I know that a lot of people have had this experience, and I don't know that you would count it as a ghost, but I don't know that you wouldn't. Like after my dad passed away 20 years ago from cancer, my brother had been going through a lot of different things that were crucial, major life points, I guess goals in his life. He was graduating from college and getting married all within a month of my dad passing away. Because my dad passed away on April 20th, and my brother in May is sitting there literally on one weekend. He's graduating from college, and the next weekend he's getting married. And my dad was supposed to be his best man. And so after, it was like right after he got back from his honeymoon, he had a dream. And he was like at a family reunion. He said it was very vivid. And he was sitting at this picnic table, and Dad came over and sat across from him at the picnic table. And it was like they just had this conversation about all the stuff that had taken place since Dad had passed away. It's like catching up. And, he hasn't had one like that since. Some people might just say he was thinking about him, but he got the impression he was actually talking to our dad, through the dream, that he used the dream to communicate to my brother because of the crucial timing of the death in his life. And, who's to say that isn't my dad's spirit? That doesn't mean that he's a demon. Who's to say that that's not a spirit that's actually coming to ease my brother's sadness at not being able to experience those things with my dad? What would be wrong with that? I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
I don't either.
And so when people, going back to your question, when people talk about, oh, it's just a bunch of humdrum or anything, well, first of all, if you experienced all that I'd experienced, you would not be saying that. I'm not an ignorant person. I'm not somebody that's naive. I've got my master's degree. I'm educated. I didn't have these experiences for the first majority of my life. For like the first 40 years of my life, I did not have these experiences. Started experiencing these things in the past, 8 years. So, or less. And so, it's not like I've been dealing with this stuff all my life. It just all of a sudden started, and I had to find some answers. And, I needed to know what to do about them, because not all of them were bad. That little girl wasn't bad, and it's kind of sad when people shut out the possibilities, thinking that they know everything, just because they've read a book. Granted, it's the Bible, but there's a lot of things that we don't understand about the Bible and many other books out there. To me, anybody that thinks that they know everything about the spirit, they're fooling themselves. There's a lot of things we don't understand.
Well, I agree, but we're up to our last 2 minutes, and
okay.
I'm gonna give you the opportunity, to give your contact information and anything you want to tell anybody real quick. And I want to say I greatly appreciate you coming on the show. It's been amazing. I enjoyed it.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad I told you I'd have some good stories for you. But I appreciate the opportunity coming on tonight, and you can reach me. My last name is a little unusual spell, but if you search my name, you should be able to come up with most of my links pretty quickly. My last name is spelled Brouillette, Kimberly Brouillette. And the first book, like I said, is Secrets in the Shallows. The second is Devil in the Details. And the third one coming on Halloween is Method in the Madness. My website is KimberlyBrouillette.com. You can also search my name, and find me on Facebook. I have an author page, as well as I'm on Twitter at Right For You, WRITERIGHT, and the number 4 and the letter U on Twitter. I'm also on, you can find me on Instagram and all sorts, pretty much you can search for me on Google and you will find my name all over the place. So, but if you get to my website or my author page, or even Twitter, you should be able to find my other links. My books are available on Amazon in paperback and also in Kindle. You can order autographed paperbacks directly through me. I suggest either go to email me at info@KimberlyBrouillette.com or go to my website or contact me through either Twitter or Facebook. And I am taking pre-orders. I am doing a special real quick for all 3 books. I'm available for $50 for all 3 books. So, like I said, that's about 1,200 pages. It's a pretty hefty amount, but that does include shipping. and it's for pre-ordering. It includes pre-ordering the third book, which will be released on Halloween. So if you are interested in pre-ordering, just contact me so we can get those directly. Otherwise, they're $20 a book plus shipping and handling.
Okay. Well, like I said,
directly for me.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
I appreciate you coming on the show, and anytime you want to come back, the door's always open.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much. And the Kindle editions are only $2.99 too, so those are inexpensive. But if you'd like to, maybe after the third book comes out, we can get back together and I can tell you a little bit more at that point.
Oh, I love it. Oh, I will. I love it. Heck yeah, I agree.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me on.
Oh, you're so welcome, and I'm glad you came on. I greatly appreciate it. You have a good night.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Hi, this is Maury Moreland Morrison, here to tell you Geico has more than just great savings. Much more. Yes, while Geico could help you rack up more moolah faster than you can say metamorphosis, they've also been the fastest growing auto insurer for more than 10 years. That's more like it. Furthermore, Geico has fast and friendly claim service. That might seem like an oxymoron, but it's not. All the more reason to say no other auto insurer has more than Geico. Geico. Expect great savings and a whole lot more. Hi, this is Maury Moreland Morrison, here to tell you Geico has more than just great savings. Much more. Yes, while Geico could help you rack up more moolah faster than you can say metamorphosis, they've also been the fastest growing auto insurer for more than 10 years. That's more like it. Furthermore, Geico has fast and friendly claim service. That might seem like an oxymoron, but it's not. All the more reason to say no other auto insurer has more than Geico. Geico. Expect great savings and a whole lot more.